What is up, guys? Jar here back with another video, and in this video I'll be breaking down my entire $1 million plus clothing brand ad strategy and basically giving you guys insight on how I run things for my 7-figure clothing brand. To get things started, this is yesterday, 7.8K on the day. This is my Instagram, Angelic, as you can see right here. Got 100K followers there. Oops. And then this is my TikTok, also got 100K followers there. And yeah, let's get straight into it. So my whole concept and idea is that simple scales and complex fails, right? So I got this from my mentor, and essentially, before I used to be trying to making so many changes in the ad account, whether it be, killing ads, launching new ads, or, constantly shifting the budget. But what I came to realize was that that's actually hurting my performance in the sense that I'm throwing everything back into learning and essentially just hurting my performance as a whole by just touching too many things. So there's really like three main things that I do on a weekly basis that really just leads me to have a overall optimized and highly performing ad account. So number one is that I upload around 3 ad concepts a week, right? So it's important, especially with Andromeda, right, that we have creative diversification. And essentially, if you're not posting organically, right, you're not having new content being released to followers, because like we live in a an attention economy, and at the end of the day we need to get attention one form or another, right? So when you only have a limited amount of creatives, it's kind of hard to recapture that attention, right? So I like to launch 3 ad concepts a week, and then essentially you're just trying to find ads that will allow you to unlock more spend. That's really what it comes down to, because once you can unlock more spend, then you can make more money, you know what I'm saying, because you're getting more ad spend, and then you're getting more revenue on top of that, right? So really the goal is to make more money, and then to achieve that you need to unlock more spend, and then to unlock more spend you need to have a better performing ad account, right? Because you can't scale if you're not hitting KPIs, right? So when it comes to producing these ad concepts, the first thing I do is start off with research, right? So that either Instagram, TikTok, Reddit, past ads, etc. Like just off the top of my head, like Instagram specifically, I like to, go on my For You page and just scroll on reels, and basically like anything that catches my eye, right, on Instagram that I think will work good as an ad, then I run it. So I can just show you guys kind of like my thought process on things. So I just go to the reels tab, like I said. And then basically I'll just scroll, right? So boom, bro really cleared the fence, 8K likes, right? Boom. And it's like a little ad with a clothing brand, right? So I can say, okay, boom, I'll bookmark this, right? And put it to like my inspo board, and like, okay, this might be a good ad to run. Because essentially when it comes to ads, right, you're just looking for posts that did well organically, because they're gonna show up in the same placement. Like on reels right here, right, your ad's gonna show up right here. So you still have to capture people's attention and things like that, right? So it has the same principles and concepts, right? So ads that do well organically, or content that does well organically rather, is a good telltale sign for that it will do well with ads, right? So you can also do the same thing on TikTok, right? Go on TikTok and then scroll on your For You page, and it's kind of going to be a slight difference in between Instagram and TikTok. Instagram is going to be a little bit more polished in terms of content, whereas TikTok is going to be more, less polished and more, more natural and more, ugly per se, right? And then you can also look at Reddit, right? Look at through some forums, see what people's pain points are. You know what I mean? Just off the top of my head, I know a big pain point for my niche is that Instagram brands have long shipping times and things like that. So you can potentially create an ad concept off that, right? And then also look at your past ads, right? So looking at your past ads to see what did well, what didn't do well, and further, having those feedback loops and learnings from what you run, right? So I have my own Google Sheets doc, right? And this is kind of where like I spitball everything. So whether it's be like certain ad concepts or different angles I want to attack and things like that, or just certain headlines and things of that nature, right? So I just have everything consolidated on the Google Docs, and that's kind of how I, create my ad concepts on a weekly basis, right? So once you do your research, right, now from your research, you're gonna create a hypothesis, right? So boom, let's say I see this piece of content, right? I think it will do well, right? You feel me? Let me find a good piece of content. Like this got 30K likes, so I can be like, okay, I have high confidence that this will do well, right? And then basically I create a hypothesis, right? And when it comes to creating a hypothesis, this is an example of a past ad I did. As you can see, I go through all the steps, right? I break down my hypothesis. I have my persona that I'm targeting, have my ad angle, my desire, my market awareness, my market sophistication. This using Eugene Schwartz in breakthrough advertising, and then I have different scripts and things that I can build off of that, right? So everything's very cohesive, right? And you can more so learn about this through more research that you guys can do independently. Me personally, I read Breakthrough Advertising with Eugene Schwartz, and basically it just breaks down the marketing fundamentals when it comes to desire, market awareness, market sophistication, things of that sort. And then essentially what you get after your hypothesis is you execute on that, and then you have your output, right? So recently I actually just shot some content for my brand over the weekend. Oh, if this will load. I shot some content for my brand over the weekend, as you can see. And it's just kind of working off of some hypothesis that I seen on Instagram Reels. You know what I mean? So that's kind of that. Here's another one. You know, this is also, oh, that's actually the hook. But as you can see, yeah, that's just the whole thought process or whatever. But basically, you're just doing that, right? And when it comes to concepts, you want to have, high confidence quality, right, over quantity per se, right? Because you can launch fucking 30 concepts a week, but if they're not high intent, high quality, then your hit rate is going to be very low, right? You want to be a sniper when it comes to creative testing, right? You really want to be very precise and very intentional when it comes to each of your creative tests. Like each creative test, you should have a strong hypothesis that it will become a quote unquote winning ad that will unlock a lot of spend for the ad account, right? So yeah, just doing that over quantity per se has allowed me to actually, be able to scale the ad account, right? So next thing is we need to actually log the ads, right? So once you actually have the process of creating, consistently 3 ad concepts a week, now you need to start to log those ads, right? Because it's important that we have the feedback loops, because we need to learn like what worked and what hasn't worked, right? So essentially, when we have those feedback loops, right, and it enables us to apply those to future learnings and future tests, right? So as you can see, we have this sheet right here. Winner versus loser, low spend, good CPA, things of that nature, personas, desires, market awareness, sophistication, et cetera, et cetera. And then basically when it comes to, creating your next ad concepts, you're kind of looking at this, right, in tandem with everything from your other research, right, and creating, a stronger hypothesis into a test that would actually, work, right? Because we want to be very intentional. And I found that when I actually do like the due diligence through all of these processes, that my actual hit rate is a lot higher versus if I just, skip the feedback loops, think it's like redundant, or I don't need to do it per se, and just launch random things and throw stuff at the wall to see what works. So this being actually intentional behind each and every test has been infinitely more effective, right? And then third and final thing that I do is I do one optimization a week in the ad account. So whether that be killing ads, or whether that be making significant changes, things of that nature, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to be stable and systemic, right? Constant changes throws the machine back into learning, and that's not what we want, right? So to branch off of this, right, let's break down some definitions first, right? So when you're actually optimizing your ads, right, it's important that you actually know what you're optimizing for, right? So it's important that you have a target CPA / ROAS in mind, right? And in order to identify what your target CPA and ROAS is, it's important that you know what your break-even CPA and ROAS is, right? So here's like a little Google Sheets that I have, right? Little formulas showing the cost of goods, ship, how much it costs to ship to your warehouse, right? If you're charging shipping, what's the shipping revenue? What's your shipping and handling to customers, right? Whether that be a pick and pack fee if you have a 3PL, whether that be the postal fee, etc., right? And then you're looking at your overall transaction fees and other third-party fees, miscellaneous fees, and you got your total cost, right? So that'll be your cost of delivery, right? And then we have, what you're selling the product for, your MSRP. Let's say it's $80, right? So now we know our profit margin is 53%, and our profit dollars is $42, and our break-even ROAS is 1.88, right? So we can know that, okay, boom, in the ad account, if anything is 1.88 or lower, we're either breaking even or losing money, right? And then basically, in order to calculate a target CPA, just a good rule of thumb, this is very nuanced, but a good rule of thumb that you can just do is you can just aim for around 10 to 20% net based off that, right? So you just aim 10 to 20% points higher than this. So you can aim for like a ROAS of 2 point something, you know what I mean? And then you'll get your target CPA and ROAS, right? Now, moving over here to the hard floor, this will make more sense when we explain it here. But I'll just kind of show you guys like the kind of thought process of what I go through on a weekly basis when it comes to actually scaling and making optimizations and everything like ad related, basically, right? So it's not actually as much, in terms of in the ad account, right? I spend very little time in the ad account itself, right? So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday, I'm killing ads, right? I'm logging my ads, logging my, feedback loops, right? And then I'm determining, whether I have to scale or not, right? And then Tuesday, don't touch the ad account, right? I'm just doing my scaling rules. Wednesday, this is where I edit my ads. So all my ads from Thursday, when I plan my ads, right? And then throughout the week, I actually execute on those ads, right? And then I actually edit those ads on Wednesday and make them go live, right? And I publish them. Then on Thursday, I launch those ads, right, that I edited. And then I also plan ads for the next week, right? Or weeks in advance, right? And then basically, yeah, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I let those new ads take learnings, right? And then back on Monday, I determine if I need to kill any ads that are sucking up spend and hurting overall business performance, right? Because that's another thing, right? We want to look at overall business performance as a result of ads taking up overall spend, right? Because we don't want to look at ads in isolation. We want to look at the ecosystem in a whole, right? Because attribution is a lie, right? So and then we're ultimately following our scaling, roadmap guide each and every day as well. So when it comes to scaling, this is kind of like the framework that I look at. It's a little bit more nuanced than this, but this is the overall rough idea, right? So I'm looking at my scaling rules on a daily basis, right? And basically, the best way that I've determined is just to look at a trailing 3-day average. I've tried like day to day. I've tried 7-day averages, things of that nature, but I just found that 3-day average is a nice happy medium, because if you do just off today's performance, it can be influenced, based off, if you send an email blast or SMS blast or not. That's if you're scaling based off MER as opposed to AMER, things of that nature. But also you can just have a random blip in performance, right? And that doesn't really show the actual true direction of how your performance is trending. Right, so because we don't want to burn money at the end of the day, right? So 3-day average, is it above target? Yes. If it is, then we're scaling by 20%, right? And like I said, it's a little bit more nuanced. Like if you barely hit the target, right, then you can scale by 10%, maybe even lower, right? Even if you're at higher spends and things of that nature. But let's say you're above target by 30-40%, right? Then you can confidently scale by 20%. And then if your 3-day trailing average is below target, right, then I'm asking, okay, is our 7-day average above target? And if it is, right, and we're just having a bad 3 days, then we're just going to maintain spend and focus on new tests, whether that be new CRO tests, whether that be new, ads into the ad account, things of that nature, right? Because ultimately we want to keep the momentum, right? We want to keep the momentum, and we don't want to constantly be making, these day trading decisions based off of short time periods, right? But if the 7-day average is, not above target, right, then we know that overall we're trending down in terms of performance. So then the next question that I ask is that am I at the hard floor? And essentially, like I mentioned before, the hard floor is basically, the absolute minimum amount of spend, to maintain, in order to reach the desired top line revenue volume that we need, right? So an example scenario is that if we have $500 a day in fixed overhead expense, ad spend should probably be over $500 a day if you want to, drive enough contribution dollars to cover our fixed overhead, right? Because if you drive your spend overall more, if you drive your spend down, right, then you're not going to be making enough top line volume in terms of revenue in order to cover, your fixed overhead and things of that nature. So it's kind of the deal of, you need enough contribution dollars to actually, keep and sustain your business, right? So if you're at your hard floor, right, and you're already at the minimum viable spend, then you're just gonna maintain spend and focus on new tests, right? But if you're not, then you're decreasing spend by 20%, right? And then essentially we're just following this simple playbook, and yeah, that's kind of the best way that have surmised it. But yeah, when it comes to actually like running the system, it's not complicated. It's more so, the actual execution part. You know what I'm saying? Because really, it all comes down to, your ad concepts, right? And your hit rate overall. And then yeah, just overall refining, removing the weakest link. If there's a link in the chain that's the weakest, then we're removing that. You know what I mean? Always testing things, making hypotheses, and always making sure that we have those feedback loops, not just on ad test itself as well, but just on any optimization that we make, whether that be killing ads and things of that nature, and then recording the results, right? And then once we get this dialed in, then we can focus on other tests in the business, right? Such as, trying to lower our cost of goods to overall lower our cost of delivery, right? Trying to CRO test with Intelligems or another tool, right, to raise our overall price so we can boost our profit dollars and get a lower break-even ROAS so we can ultimately scale on Meta or TikTok higher. You know what I mean? But yeah, this is kind of the whole framework in the basis on which everything is built. It's simple, like I said, but simple scales, complex fails, right? So yeah, my name is Jar, and if you want to work with me one-on-one, then there's a link down below. But until then, I'll see y'all in the next video.